Just Noel, the angel did say, was to certain poor shepherds in fields where they lay, in fields where they lay, keeping their sheep. On a cold winter's night that was so deep, Noel, 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 born is the King of Israel. Noel, 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 Noel.
Hello, and welcome to the Cast Gallery of the Ashmolean, and thank you for joining us for this Members' Christmas film. As we look back over what has been an extraordinary and, let's face it, challenging year. And it all started so well. I mean, this time a year ago, we were coming to the end of the most successful exhibition ever held at the Ashmolean, the wonderful Last Supper at Pompeii, and looking forward to opening Young Rembrandt. Indeed, we did open Young Rembrandt, but then 2.5 short weeks later, we had to close our doors, which remained closed for almost half a year. Although our doors were closed, we did not close as a museum. Indeed, we remained astonishingly active behind those doors or from our homes. And among the things I'm most pleased about is that in this period, we hit one of our major milestones in relation to digitising our collections by making 1/4 of our collections available online in a single searchable database. That's almost 200,000 objects. And of course, that milestone couldn't have come at a better moment, because with our doors closed, the only way of making this wonderful museum accessible to our visitors has been online. And we've been reaching out to our existing visitors and to new audiences in all kinds of ways over the internet, from members' talks, which I hope you've been attending, to teaching schools online and films and so on. I'm happy to say that as I'm speaking to you now, the museum is open again and humming once again with activity. And there's also an enormous amount to see here. We've got a wonderful display of Hans Koper's pots, celebrating the centenary of his birth, and positioned within the galleries of ancient and medieval Cyprus, so surrounded by objects and artifacts of the ancient world that so influenced him as a potter. There's a wonderful little exhibition, Mediterranean Threads, looking at our Greek and Cypriot embroidery collection. And then there's an intriguing show called Owning the Past, looking at the history of Iraq as a nation and how the national identity of Iraq is intimately connected with the remains of the ancient world in Mesopotamia. And so looking a little further ahead, in early February, we will be opening what I think is going to be a ravishing exhibition of our pre-Raphaelite drawings and watercolours. This is a show drawn exclusively from our collections, but shows just how rich those collections are, and also highlights the extraordinary range of drawings that were made by the pre-Raphaelites, the different techniques, the different subjects, the different ways in which they captured the world. And these range, for example, from the very first ideas for the light of the world, the great painting in Keble College Chapel, drawn on the back of an envelope, to the highly finished landscape drawings of Ruskin and others. And so it's a show that I think will really demonstrate the riches of the Ashmoleans' almost bottomless collections of drawings and watercolours. And further ahead still, next summer, when we hope that the world will have returned to some sort of normal, we will be opening our Tokyo exhibition. This is an exhibition that we had hoped to open this year to coincide with the Tokyo Olympics, and is now going to open next July to coincide with the Tokyo Olympics, and is a major exhibition exploring Tokyo as a centre of artistic creation and production over the last 400 years, from its early beginnings as the home of the shogun to the extraordinary megacity that it is today. Among the things that has struck me over the last few months has been the ingenuity, creativity and flexibility of the teams here at the Ashmolean. With our doors closed, we've all of us had to find different ways of doing things. And the fact that we've done so is hugely gratifying and enabled us to continue to act and serve you, our visitors, as a museum. To give you a sense of some of the things that we've been up to behind closed doors, we've now got 2 short films, one from Ali Greathead, one of our conservators, and the other from Matthew Winterbottom, a curator. And Ali will be showing us what she's been doing as she prepares for our Pre-Raphaelite exhibition, working on those drawings and watercolours, while Matthew is going to introduce us to the extraordinary group of objects that we're hoping to acquire from the Mountbatten collection.
Welcome to the Conservation Department at the Ashmolean Museum. My name's Alexandra Greathead. I'm the head of the Paper Conservation Studio. I work in a larger team of conservators. They represent the kind of material you'll find across the collection. So we have textile conservator, painting conservator, objects conservators who can work on metals, ceramics, glass, a wide variety of things. We also incorporate the mount maker and the exhibitions team, as well as preventive conservation and research. Today I'm going to be mostly talking to you about the kind of things that we're working at the moment, most specifically the Pre-Raphaelite Drawings exhibition, which will be opening in spring 2021. We started off with the assessments. We've had a look at all of the drawings. There are quite a wide range of supports, of media, of artists such as Rossetti, Burne-Jones, Holman Hunt, a lot of the artists that you will have heard of, but hopefully see objects you're not so familiar with. So in order to prepare those objects for the exhibition and ensure that they are as safe as they can be for that display, they come to paper conservation, and if they need treatment, we treat them. That's where our assessments came in earlier in the year. We've established whether they do need treatment, how much treatment they need, or if they just need to be mounted. That means close examination of all of the drawings. Amongst those will be decisions about the continued treatment, the mounting, the rehousing, and whether we can show them at all. It's a range of materials covering drawings, watercolours, pastels, graphite. So I've brought in a couple of drawings for you to have a look at and just talk through the kind of things that we've looked at and the kind of things that are important to us when planning and actually executing the treatment. So the first is a drawing of 2 nymphs by John William Waterhouse. It's in an oldish mount, and it's a friable media. That means it's a dry media such as chalk, charcoal, graphite, that sort of thing. We've looked closely at this drawing. I've looked at it under the microscope and with the naked eye, and just tried to establish what the paper is. So for example, the artist has used the wire side of this machine-made paper, which has given them what's known as tooth, which will drag the media off the pencil, the stylus, whatever, and keep it on the paper. I want to know what that media is, so I've been looking at it under the microscope. It's believed to be black chalk. I think it's a range of things. I think it does have black chalk in it. I think it has graphite and charcoal in it. Something unusual in this is that looking at it under the microscope, something's happened to the media. The particles of media on the support, the paper, they look like little islands, little sort of clumps of media, which is quite unusual. That could be the result of a wet technique used by the artist. They might have licked the charcoal or the graphite before they applied it. It might be that someone has used a wet treatment on this at some point, perhaps when they were repairing it, and that's drawn the particles together. What it really means for me is that I'm going to have to spend more time looking at it under the microscope, which I'm very happy to do. And as a result of what is just the treatments, actually I'll feed that back to the curators and they can have a bit more knowledge about each drawing. So our preparation for the exhibition often leads to more information, more understanding of the objects themselves. This one has a slight issue with the mount, and there's a certain amount of offset and a little bit of damage has happened as a result of the mount, so we will be remounting it as well. And I will apply false margins so that you can see the whole drawing right up to the edge of the sheet, which we can't do at the moment. So more work to be done on this before I can start treating it. The next drawing is something I was looking at yesterday and has turned into a slightly thorny issue. And I thought you might like to see what it is we're grappling with. These are two drawings by Hughes. They were mounted together. One's a finished ink drawing. This is more the preparatory drawing or an earlier stage. This is a double-sided drawing. It's been put into the mount with an acrylic on the back so that you can see both sides of it. The acrylic, I suspect, has been on there since it came into the museum in 1917, 1918. It's quite yellow, it's quite wavy and bumpy, and it moved the minute I touched it. The issue with this is, the reason I'm showing it to you on the acrylic is because it's now stuck to the acrylic. It had a false margin all around the edge so that when they mounted it you could see the whole edge of the sheet. That's quite useful for art historians to be able to see. The false margin was this paper, which has a sort of slightly yellowy browny look to it. It's the same sort of makeup as newspaper. It's a wood pulp paper and it's not heavily processed. It's gone brown. It has staining on it from pressure sensitive tape. That's anything like sellotape, masking tape, any of those tapes that you press to stick. The adhesive has oozed out and created this line. But one of the big reasons we wanted to remove it is because this is so brittle that it just takes a few folds and it comes apart. There's no integrity to this paper at all. It doesn't lend any strength or support to this drawing. I'm going to very carefully lift this up so you can see it. On the back here, you can see a greyish line there, not so visible as the little grey mark there, but that is where this is stuck to the acrylic. That's where they applied the inlay. So now I have the problem of this being stuck to the acrylic. You can see when I lifted it up that it's the inside of an envelope. So the artist literally drew on the back of an envelope. And by the time I'm looking at it now, in 2020, it has false corners applied. They've been quite crudely applied. What I don't know is if those have been applied by the artist originally or in-house at some point to make it a nice rectangular sheet to be able to treat. I will be talking to the curators more. I've already looked at our historic records to try and establish whether those corners are original. If they are the artist's corners, then that's part of the artist's original intent. And ethically, I can't remove those. I could potentially take them off, clean them and put them back, but I can't take them away. So that's why we need to have those careful conversations with the curators and establish that we're doing everything that we can as ethically as we can, because conservators, as many other professionals in the museum do, sign up to a code of ethics. And that's what we're going to do for this. We're going to do the very best we can for it, but within the parameters of what we're allowed to do. My big problem is that often I would use moisture, but I think this might be iron gall ink, which is a very acidic ink. That's, for example, the same ink that Handel used for a number of his manuscripts, and the notes have just fallen straight out of the paper because it corroded the paper. So moisture will accelerate that process of breakdown, and I need to establish that this is or isn't iron gall ink before I can continue to treat it. And then we'll treat the rest of the drawing, do any repairs that need doing, inlay it and mount it. So I hope that's given you a flavour of the kind of material that we're working on and some of the glorious drawings that are going to be in the Pre-Raphaelite exhibition, which hopefully you'll be able to come and see for yourselves in spring 2021. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Matthew Winterbottom, and I'm the Curator of Decorative Arts and Sculpture here at the Ashmolean Museum. I work in the Western Art Department, and I cover everything really from the Renaissance through to contemporary. I'd like to talk to you today about a group of objects on display here in the Mallet Gallery in the museum, which we are trying to fundraise to acquire for the permanent collections. And the group consists of an extraordinary early portrait by Van Dyck and a very important group of English early silver of the 16th and 17th centuries. All the objects were acquired by Sir Ernest Cassel in the early 20th century. Now, we're calling this the Mountbatten Appeal. This is because Sir Ernest's favourite granddaughter was Edwina, and Edwina was an extraordinary character in her own right, and she married Lord Louis Mountbatten in 1922. Edwina's husband, Louis Mountbatten, of course, was the great-grandson of Queen Victoria. He was also the uncle of our current Prince Philip. What I'd like to do now is talk a little bit more in depth about the objects that you can see behind me. The most important piece of the entire group of objects is undoubtedly this portrait, painted by Sir Anthony Van Dyck in about 1619, when Van Dyck was only 20 years old. So it just shows you how extraordinarily precocious and skilled he was, even as a very young man. And this was painted before he came to England, so this is painted in his native city of Antwerp. And it seems to show the wife of an wealthy Antwerp merchant who was particularly known for dealing in silks and laces and luxury materials. She seems to be Gertrude Wincker, who is a member of this family, and painted as a marriage portrait in her sort of finery. So you see she's wearing the most extraordinarily detailed ruff, this large cartwheel ruff around her neck, beautiful sort of lace collars and cuffs, and this amazing embroidered bodice that she's wearing. Now, Sir Ernest not only collected fine art, he was a great collector of English silver. The Ashmolean, as you will all know, has an extraordinary collection of English silver, and this is an opportunity for us to further enhance and expand that. This is a group of 5 objects. In fact, the group consists of 9 objects in total, but these are the most important pieces here. By far the most important piece is actually in the centre, this lovely cup and cover in the centre, and this is known as the Bacon Cup. This is the earliest piece here, and this was made in 1574 by Queen Elizabeth I's royal goldsmith, who's got the rather wonderful name of Affable Partridge. And he made this cup. It's one of 3 cups made for Sir Nicholas Bacon, who was the keeper of the Great Seal to Elizabeth I. And he had been given by the Queen the old seal of the former Queen, Mary I, and her husband Philip II of Spain, and he later on turned it into 3 important cups, very heavy, beautiful cups. And each cup was made for one of his country estates. So he had 3 country estates. This one here in the centre is associated with Stiffkey in North Norfolk. It's a very beautiful cup, and it actually makes the most of the beauty, the intrinsic beauty of the silver. It looks gold to you, and this is because it's actually been covered with a thin layer of gold. It's known as silver gilt, but underneath it, it contains the metal from the Great Seal of Mary I. So it's a hugely historic and important object. And what's rather wonderful about it is it shows this lovely plain form. You know, it's actually the decoration is in the shape of the cup. There's very little surface decoration. It's really making a play on the importance of the metal, because the metal has this wonderful association with royalty and with Mary I. The only decoration really is in the form of the finial. If you look at the top of the cup, you'll see that the top of the finial has a little kind of hairy pig on the top, and this really is a play on the name of Bacon, the surname of Sir Nicholas Bacon, so it's a pun on his surname. The entire package of objects is worth over £15 million, but because of the hybrid acceptance in lieu scheme, we can acquire them for £500,000, which of course is an absolute bargain. We've done very well so far. We still have a bit of a way to go, but we've already had exceptionally generous grants from public funding bodies, and we're in the last stretch now, hopefully to acquire these objects for the collection. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ali and Matthew. I hope you enjoyed those films, which gave some taste of things to come and excitements of next year. So it really only remains for me to say Happy Christmas to you all. I know that this Christmas is not as we might have wished it, but I hope that you will have a happy and restful time with those around you. I also, of course, hope that you will find time to come to the museum. Some of you may not have done all your Christmas shopping yet, in which case, can I remind you of your discount in the shop and actually point you towards a rather wonderful publication that we've made called In Praise of Hands, with prints by the wonderful artist Naoku Matsubara and poems by Penny Boxall looking at our hands, which I think over the course of the pandemic, we've all become rather more conscious of, shall we say, both the need for touch and perhaps the risk of touch as well. And finally, before I go, I would just like to say thank you. We here at the Ashmolean could not have survived through this incredibly challenging year without the support of you, our members, and all our many supporters out there. So thank you for sticking with us, and I hope that next year, as we return to normality, we will all be able to see each other again and celebrate again together. But in the meantime, thank you and Merry Christmas.
So